The sun hung low over the dusty plains of Texas, casting long shadows across the weathered barn where Sarah Mitchell sat bound and trembling. Her blue dress, once pristine and carefully pressed for Sunday service, now bore the stains of tears and the harsh reality of her situation. The rope around her wrists had rubbed raw against her skin, and her face showed the purple evidence of her mother-in-law's cruelty. Sarah had married into the Mitchell family 6 months ago, believing she had found love with young Thomas Mitchell. But Thomas had died in a riding accident just 3 weeks after their wedding, leaving Sarah alone with his bitter mother, Eleanor, and his violent brother, Jacob. What had begun as a home had quickly become a prison. The barn smelled of hay and old leather mixed with the metallic scent of fear. Sarah's breathing came in short, shallow gasps as she listened to the angry voices outside. Eleanor's sharp tone cut through the evening air like a blade, while Jacob's deeper voice rumbled with barely contained rage. "She's nothing but trouble," Eleanor hissed, "bringing shame to our family name. Thomas should never have married such a weak little thing." "The whole town's starting to ask questions," Jacob replied, his boots crunching on the dry ground. "We need to do something permanent about this problem." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She had tried to run before, but they always found her. The nearest town was 15 miles away, and the Mitchell ranch sat isolated among the rolling hills, far from any neighbors who might hear her cries for help. As darkness began to creep across the horizon, Sarah heard the familiar sound of Eleanor's footsteps approaching the barn. The heavy wooden door creaked open, and the elderly woman entered with Jacob close behind. Eleanor's gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her black dress made her look like a vulture circling its prey. "Still sitting there feeling sorry for yourself?" Eleanor sneered, raising her hand. The slap echoed through the barn, leaving Sarah's cheek burning. "You've brought nothing but misfortune to this family." Jacob stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Maybe it's time we taught her a proper lesson about respect." Sarah tried to scream, but only a hoarse whisper escaped her throat. She had been calling for help for hours, but no one ever came this far out to the Mitchell ranch. The isolation that had once seemed peaceful now felt like a death sentence. The beating began again, just as it had every day since Thomas's funeral. Eleanor's walking stick found its mark across Sarah's shoulders, while Jacob's boots connected with her ribs. Sarah curled into herself, trying to protect her body from the blows, but there was nowhere to hide in the small barn. "Please," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Your very existence is wrong," Eleanor spat. "You were supposed to give Thomas sons, to carry on the Mitchell name. Instead, you brought us nothing but bad luck." Miles away, across the vast expanse of prairie, Samuel Hayes rode his horse slowly toward his modest ranch house. The loneliness that had settled over him like a heavy blanket seemed particularly oppressive tonight. At 35, Samuel had spent most of his adult life working his small cattle ranch alone, with only his horses and the occasional visitor to break the silence. The wind carried strange sounds across the plains that evening, sounds that made Samuel pause and listen carefully. At first, he thought it might be an injured animal, but as he strained his ears, he realized the cries were distinctly human. A woman's voice, weak and desperate, calling for help. Samuel's weathered hands tightened on the reins as he turned his horse toward the sound. He had always been a man of few words, preferring the company of animals to people, but he could not ignore someone in distress. The cries seemed to be coming from the direction of the Mitchell ranch, a place he had always avoided due to the family's reputation for cruelty. As he rode closer, the sounds became clearer. A woman was crying out in pain, her voice growing weaker with each passing moment. Samuel's jaw tightened with determination. He had lost his own wife to illness 5 years ago, and the memory of her suffering still haunted him. He would not let another woman endure pain if he could prevent it. The Mitchell ranch came into view just as the last light faded from the sky. Samuel dismounted quietly, tying his horse to a fence post well away from the main house. He could see light flickering in the barn, and the sounds of violence were unmistakable now. A woman was being beaten, and badly. Samuel approached the barn with careful steps, his heart pounding. Through a gap in the wooden boards he could see the scene. Inside, a young woman with blonde hair was tied to a post, her dress torn and bloodied. An elderly woman in black stood over her with a walking stick, while a younger man delivered kicks to the prisoner's side. Without hesitation, Samuel burst through the barn door. "That's enough," he said, his voice steady despite the rage building. Inside him, "Step away from her." Eleanor and Jacob turned in surprise, their faces showing both shock and anger at the interruption. Eleanor raised her walking stick defensively. "This is none of your concern, Hayes. Get off our property." "I'm making it my concern," Samuel replied. Moving closer to Sarah, her eyes met his, and he saw a flicker of hope in their depths. "No one deserves to be treated like this." Jacob stepped forward, his fists raised. "You have no right to interfere in family matters." Samuel's hand moved to the gun at his hip. "I have every right to stop what I'm seeing here. This ends now." The standoff lasted only moments before Eleanor grabbed Jacob's arm. "Come," she said coldly. "We'll deal with this later." As they left the barn, Samuel quickly moved to Sarah's side. He cut the ropes binding her wrists with his knife, his movements gentle despite his calloused hands. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I'm going to get you out of here." Sarah collapsed against him, her body shaking with exhaustion and relief. "Thank you," she managed to say. "I thought no one would ever come." Samuel helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they made their way to his horse. "Can you ride?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, though her legs felt like water beneath her. With Samuel's help, she mounted the horse and he swung up behind her. As they rode away from the Mitchell ranch, Sarah felt the first peace she had known in months. The journey to Samuel's ranch was quiet but not uncomfortable. Sarah found herself leaning back against Samuel's chest, feeling safer than she had since Thomas's death. His arms around her were protective, not possessive, and his presence was calming rather than threatening. At Samuel's ranch, he helped Sarah down from the horse and led her to his small but clean house. He prepared a bath for her and found some of his late wife's clothes that might fit. While Sarah cleaned herself up, Samuel prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and warm milk. "You can stay here as long as you need," Samuel said as they sat at his kitchen table. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." Sarah looked across the table at this quiet man who had risked his own safety to save her. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Samuel was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because it was the right thing to do. And because ... He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because everyone deserves to be treated with kindness." As the weeks passed, Sarah slowly healed from her ordeal. Samuel never pressured her to talk about what had happened, but he was always there when she needed comfort. He taught her to tend his small garden, to care for the chickens, and to find joy in simple tasks. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah reached over and took Samuel's hand. "I want to stay," she said quietly. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I've found something here I never expected to find again." Samuel squeezed her hand gently. "Hope?" he asked. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile she had worn in months. "Love," she replied. The lonely rancher and the rescued woman had found in each other what they had both been missing. In the vast emptiness of the Texas plains, they had discovered that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the darkest soil, and that hope can be found in the most unexpected places.